Every alien warrior failed the test, until a human janitor shocked the galaxy. The grand throne room of Aurelian Spire shimmered like a living storm. Silver light ran across the high ceiling, where floating crystals hummed softly, illuminating the golden pillars that stretched to infinity. The air was thick with tension. Every sound, every movement echoed through the massive chamber like thunder. Empress Kaida of the Helian Dominion sat on her throne, her eyes cold and tired. Her skin had a faint metallic glow, and her long white hair flowed over her shoulders like a river of light. Her empire ruled 5-star systems. Her word could destroy fleets. But at this moment, Kaida was bored. For 6 long hours, she had watched her elite warriors fail the same challenge, her Royal Ascension Gauntlet. Each warrior had sworn loyalty, skill, and strength. Each one had fallen before reaching the relic at the far end of the test. The floor of the throne room was now scarred with the marks of failure, burns from plasma traps, dents from armor, and the faint smell of ozone. "Next," Kaida called, her voice echoing across the chamber. The doors opened again. Another massive figure entered, this one taller than most, armored in black and gold plates that shimmered with kinetic energy. He knelt. "Your Majesty, I am Trass, son of Korin, champion of the Western Rings." Kaida waved a hand, not even hiding her boredom. "Begin." The floor shifted. Panels moved like puzzle pieces, transforming the center of the room into a deadly obstacle field. Spinning blades, hovering drones, and shifting energy barriers came alive with mechanical roars. Trass charged forward with confidence. His boosters flared. His armor shimmered. For a while, he moved perfectly, dodging, jumping, slashing through barriers. But when he reached the neural field, his body stiffened. Invisible pulses hit him from all sides. His vision blurred. The drones fired. He tried to block, but one plasma shot hit his chest. He fell backward with a crash that shook the floor. "Test failed," said the cold voice of the automated system. Kaida sighed. "Another one?" Her counsel shifted nervously. High Chancellor Vrax cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, perhaps the gauntlet is—" Kaida's eyes snapped toward him. "Too difficult? My grandmother completed it. Are you suggesting my warriors have grown weak?" "No, Your Majesty," Vrax said quickly, lowering his gaze. The room fell silent except for the faint crackle of the energy field shutting down. And then, something small moved at the far corner of the hall. A human. He was quietly mopping the floor near the far pillar, almost invisible in his simplicity. He wore a worn apron and thick gloves. His brown hair was messy and his sleeves were rolled up, showing strong forearms marked with light scars. He looked completely out of place among the towering aliens and glittering armor. Kaida's eyes narrowed. "Who is that?" "A maintenance worker, Majesty," said one of the attendants quickly. "A human assigned to sanitation detail." Kaida tilted her head. The sight amused her. She, the Empress of Helion, surrounded by failed champions. And yet this human moved calmly, working without fear, as if none of this mattered. A small smile touched her lips. "Human," she called. The man froze. Slowly he looked up, confused. "Me, Your Majesty." "Yes, you." He hesitated, then walked forward, his boots echoing on the polished floor. He stood before the throne, unsure of how close to stop. "What is your name?" Kaida asked, her tone playful but commanding. "Evan Cole, ma'am. Custodian, level 3. "Custodian," Kaida repeated, rolling the word like it was something strange. "And you've been watching the trials?" He shook his head. "Just cleaning the mess, Majesty." "Then you've seen my warriors fail." "I've seen a lot of sparks, yes," he said honestly. Kaida smiled again. "And do you think you could do better?" The hall gasped. "Your Majesty!" cried Chancellor Vrax. "That's absurd. The gauntlet is sacred. It's for trained warriors only." Kaida ignored him. She rose from her throne and walked toward Evan, the crystals above reflecting in her silver eyes. She circled him like a curious predator. "You don't look afraid," she said softly. "I'm terrified," Evan replied, forcing a nervous smile. "I just hide it well." Kaida chuckled. "Good answer." Then, before anyone could stop her, she snapped her fingers. The floor panels began to shift again, forming the deadly maze of traps and drones. Let's see if a simple human can do what the Vanguard could not. Evan stared at the course. His mop and bucket sat quietly behind him. The drones powered up with a low hum. Energy lines glowed across the floor like veins of light. He glanced up at the Empress. You're serious? Completely, she said. Begin. The countdown appeared in the air. Evan took off his gloves, placed them neatly beside his mop, and stepped forward. The audience of nobles and soldiers leaned in. The first trap activated, energy beams slicing across the floor like lightning. Evan didn't run blindly like the others. He waited, watching the pattern. He took one careful step, then another. He moved low, precise, reading the rhythm of the lights. When a spinning blade rose from the floor, he didn't fight it. He ducked under it, using its motion to spring sideways toward safety. The onlookers murmured in disbelief. He's analyzing the traps, Vrax whispered. Like he's studying them. Kaida's lips curved into a smile. He's thinking, not reacting. Evan slid past a turret that fired seconds too late. He used its recoil spark to time the next jump. He wasn't strong or armored or enhanced, but he was clever. He wasn't fighting the system. He was learning it. Kaida leaned forward, fascinated. Interesting. For the first time that day, she felt something she hadn't in hours. Hope. And as Evan Cole, the human janitor, moved deeper into the gauntlet, calm, precise, and impossible, no one noticed the faintest smile on the Empress's lips or the spark of danger returning to her eyes. The story of humanity's defiance had just begun. The entire court of Aurelian Spire was silent. The only sound was the low rhythmic hum of the gauntlet as its mechanisms shifted, resetting the traps for the next phase. Evan Cole stood at the edge of the testing ground, hands on his knees, breathing slow and steady. His dark hair stuck slightly to his forehead, his sleeves rolled up, his palms dusty from the floor. To him, this wasn't a battlefield. It was a problem to solve. He looked around carefully, eyes scanning every glowing line and moving part. The crowd waited for him to panic, to trip, to fail like the others. But instead, Evan just observed. What is he doing? Hissed one of the Helion nobles. Standing there, another whispered. He doesn't even have armor. Empress Kaida leaned forward on her throne, silver eyes fixed on him. No, she said quietly. He's learning. The timer above the arena began to flash. Time was ticking. Evan took one long breath and stepped forward. The first trap activated. 3 plasma darts shot from the walls fast as lightning. Evan ducked beneath the first, tilted his shoulder to let the second scrape harmlessly past, and sidestepped the third. It looked almost accidental, but it wasn't. He had seen the small flicker of the wall emitter before the shot. He'd timed it. The nobles murmured again. This wasn't how combatants moved. Warriors relied on reflex, brute force, or armor tech. Evan used something simpler, logic. The next section of the course transformed. Metallic tiles floated upward, forming platforms that rose and fell in uneven rhythm. Beneath them, shimmering energy swirled. A fall here meant instant disintegration. Most warriors had jumped wildly across, relying on strength. All had failed. Evan crouched and watched the tiles for a few seconds. He traced the sequence with his eyes, like reading invisible music. Then he stepped onto the first tile, not when it rose, but just before it fell. The crowd gasped. The tile dropped. But instead of falling, Evan used its momentum to push himself forward, gliding to the next one in a smooth leap. Each move was deliberate, flowing, precise. The mechanical audience sensors registered confusion, even curiosity. They had never seen someone treat the gauntlet like a puzzle instead of a war. High Chancellor Vrax turned to the Empress. He's manipulating the rhythm of the machines. Kaida didn't look away. He's listening to them, she murmured. Like a song. Evan's heartbeat was steady. He had repaired machines like these for years. Every hum, every flicker of light had a meaning, a pattern. And patterns could be beaten. Halfway across the room, a drone emerged from the shadows, sleek, armed, deadly. Its lens scanned him, red light locking on target. Now he's finished, muttered one court official. The drone fired a pulse bolt. Evan dropped flat, and the bolt shattered a platform behind him. But he didn't run. He noticed how the drone's lens dimmed half a second before every shot. He waited, dim, fire, move. He advanced step by step, using the drone's rhythm against it. Finally, he picked up a piece of shattered tile and threw it sideways. The drone's sensors tracked the motion, firing away from him. By the time it realized the mistake, Evan had dashed under it and kicked the maintenance latch on its back. Sparks flew. The drone shorted out and dropped to the floor with a heavy clang. The entire court stood frozen. A human, a janitor, had just outsmarted one of the Dominion's elite combat drones without armor, weapon, or tech. Kaida's lips curved into a slow smile. For the first time in years, something impressed her. Evan continued forward. The next section flickered alive. Narrow corridors lined with shifting walls and blinding light. Neural disruptors. Every warrior before him had collapsed here, mind overwhelmed by the invisible waves. Evan stepped inside cautiously. The hum was loud, almost alive. A dizzy pulse hit his brain, but weaker than he expected. It hurt, yes, but it didn't break him. He gritted his teeth. "Come on, you beautiful nightmare," he muttered. The field intensified, but his human brain, wired differently than Helian physiology, resisted. He pushed through one step at a time, sweat dripping down his face until he stumbled out the other side. He laughed breathlessly. "Still here." Kaida rose from her throne. "Impossible," she whispered. "No," said Chancellor Vrax, eyes wide. "Unpredictable. His neural structure isn't like ours. The disruptors don't fully affect him." The Empress looked at Evan, small, exhausted, yet standing where the strongest warriors had fallen. "A creature we underestimated," she said softly. Evan turned toward the final chamber, a dark circular platform surrounded by hovering orbs and bright blue energy lines. At its center stood the relic, a glowing sphere floating in midair, humming like a heartbeat. He wiped the sweat from his brow. "All right," he said under his breath, "one last dance." He stepped forward. Then the lights cut out. The entire gauntlet powered down at once. Drones froze. Energy beams flickered and vanished. The only illumination came from the faint glow of Kaida's throne. A voice cold and sharp echoed through the darkness. "This farce ends now." From the main gate strode Commander Routh, armor black as night, cloak trailing like smoke. His glowing red eyes fixed on the human. "You disgrace the Empress's chamber, creature. Step aside." Evan blinked, still catching his breath. "I didn't realize cleaning counted as treason." Kaida's expression hardened. "Commander," she said icily, "you interrupt my test." "With respect, Majesty." Roth bowed slightly. "This is no test. This is humiliation. Letting a servant mock our traditions undermines the Dominion itself." Kaida's hand clenched on her throne arm. Around them, murmurs spread on fear, anger, awe. Evan stood still, eyes flicking between them. The traps were gone. The silence was heavier than any weapon. Kaida rose slowly, her presence filling the room like a storm. "Enough," she said. "And the test." The lights returned. The gauntlet folded itself away piece by piece, leaving smooth white floors once more. Evan exhaled quietly, his heart pounding. He didn't know whether to bow or run. As he turned to leave, Kaida's voice stopped him. "Human," she said. "You did not win, but you did not fail either." Her gaze softened for a second, almost like curiosity, almost like respect. "Report to me tomorrow," she said. "I have questions," the crowd gasped again. Evan hesitated, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Yes, Your Majesty." He picked up his mop and gloves, his steps echoing as he exited the hall. Behind him, Kaida's council erupted in whispers. But the Empress said nothing. She just watched the door close, her silver eyes glowing faintly. Something in her expression had changed. A spark, a thought, a beginning. Because for the first time in Helian history, a human janitor had made the impossible seem possible. And Empress Kaida was not the kind of ruler who ignored impossible things. The sun of Aurelian rose like liquid fire over the crystal towers of the capital. Golden light spilled into the royal palace, cutting through the morning haze, igniting reflections across the polished corridors. The entire city was alive with whispers of one thing: the human. Servants whispered about him while sweeping the grand halls. Officers debated him over morning rations. A janitor had entered the Ascension Gauntlet and survived. No one had done that in generations. But in the highest chamber of the spire, Empress Kaida sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the holographic replay of yesterday's event. The images hovered above her throne, every movement, every step, every decision the human made. Evan Cole, Level 3 Custodian. No combat history, no modifications, no armor, and yet he moved like someone who understood the world around him better than those born into it. Kaida leaned back in silence, one slender finger tapping the throne's edge. Around her, the court waited carefully, not daring to speak. Finally, she said. He saw through the system. High Chancellor Vrax cleared his throat. Majesty, he is. Clever, perhaps. But luck favored him. Nothing more. Kaida didn't respond. She stood up, the movement sharp enough to make her guards straighten instantly. Summon him, she said. The attendants froze. Majesty? You heard me. Bring the human. Within the hour, Evan Cole found himself standing once again at the center of the royal chamber. Only this time, without the blinding lights or roaring crowd. The gauntlet was gone. The floor was smooth, calm. The silence felt heavier than before. He bowed awkwardly. You wanted to see me, Your Majesty? Kaida stepped down from her throne. The guards moved instinctively, but she lifted a hand, dismissing them. Her silver gown flowed like starlight as she approached him. Up close, Evan could feel her presence like gravity, powerful and focused. He suddenly became very aware of the grease stains on his uniform. You surprised me, she said simply. Not sure that's always a good thing, he replied. Her lips twitched, a faint smile. It is when I've seen nothing but disappointment for years. He blinked. So, do I get a medal or just another mop? That earned him a small laugh from her. The court gasped softly. None had ever heard the Empress laugh so freely. You treat royalty lightly, she said. I treat everyone the same, he said. Makes life easier. Kaida studied him for a long moment. You analyze the gauntlet like an engineer, not a warrior. Why? I fix machines for a living, he said with a shrug. Machines talk, not with words, but with sound and rhythm. You listen long enough, you can tell when they're lying. Her eyes glinted with intrigue. And did the gauntlet lie to you? Every system lies a little, Evan said. But if you understand why, you can make it tell you the truth. For the first time, Kaida didn't know whether she was speaking to a fool or a genius. She stepped closer, circling him slowly, just as she had the day before. You have no enhancements, she said. No implants, no genetic upgrades, nothing that explains your reflexes. Guess humanity's still full of surprises, he said quietly. That word, humanity, made her pause. In her empire, humans were considered a curiosity, weak, emotionally unstable, physically fragile, and yet this one stood before her unbroken. Tell me, human, she said, do all your kind think this way? No, Evan said. Most of us would have run, I just don't like running from things I don't understand. Kaida nodded slowly. Curiosity, defiance, dangerous traits. They've kept us alive, he replied. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The Empress of the most advanced civilization in the sector and a janitor from a small blue planet. Two species. Two worlds separated by power and purpose, but somehow aligned in something deeper. Kaida turned away first. Commander Routh was displeased with your performance. Evan frowned. Because I didn't die? Because you made him look foolish, she said. And he does not forget humiliation. Noted, Evan said. I'll make sure to trip next time. Kaida looked back at him sharply, but his expression was calm, almost teasing. It was the kind of quiet confidence she hadn't seen in her own people for years. She found herself smiling again, though she tried to hide it. You are either very brave or very stupid, honestly, he said. Usually both. For a heartbeat, silence lingered, not uncomfortable, but electric. Then Kaida spoke softly, her tone shifting. Your test yesterday revealed something unexpected. Our neural disruptors failed to affect you completely. Why? Evan shrugged. Guess your tech was made for Helion brains, not human ones. That is true, she admitted thoughtfully. Your mind is wired differently, resistant to patterns we find overwhelming. She looked at him again, and there it was, that glimmer of something beyond curiosity. A recognition, a spark of possibility. You don't belong here, Evan Cole, she said finally. Yet somehow I feel you were meant to be here. He met her gaze. Funny. I was thinking the same thing. Kaida stepped back, her voice returning to its regal tone. You will report to me daily. No more cleaning duties. I want to understand how you think, he blinked. Wait, you're promoting me from janitor to… What exactly? Kaida turned toward her throne. Advisor, she said simply. For now. The court gasped again, some in shock, some in horror. Evan stared. Advisor? I'm not… You will learn, she interrupted. And I will learn from you. He rubbed the back of his neck. That's one hell of a career jump. Kaida glanced over her shoulder. Welcome to the Dominion, Advisor Cole. As he bowed awkwardly and turned to leave, the council erupted into arguments, cries of impossible, insult to tradition, a human among us. Kaida silenced them with a single look. When the chamber finally emptied, she walked to the center of the room, where the gauntlet's first tile still bore the faint footprint of a human. She touched it lightly, her voice barely above a whisper. You see patterns in chaos, human, she murmured, but you don't know the chaos that's coming. Far above the palace, in the shadow of Aurelion's orbital rings, a silent probe drifted, its black hull marked with faint human symbols. Its transmission light blinked once, twice, and then vanished. The game between empires had begun. The night sky over Aurelion burned with twin moons and drifting silver clouds. The city below never truly slept. Its towers pulsed with light like veins of a living organism, and sky trams glided silently between glass spires. Yet inside the royal palace everything was still, and tense. Whispers moved faster than data streams. A human had been promoted, by royal decree. A janitor had become an advisor. In the eyes of the Dominion, that wasn't just unusual. It was unthinkable. Inside the Empress's private study, Kaida stood before a massive circular window overlooking the glittering capital. Her reflection stared back, calm, poised, unreadable, but beneath that stillness was unease. Behind her, Evan Cole sat quietly at a metal table, examining a small, cube-shaped machine. You know, he said, turning the device over in his hands, for an empire that claims perfection, this thing's wired like spaghetti. Kaida turned slightly, one silver eyebrow raised. That's a data core worth more than your entire planet, he grinned. Then your empire got scammed. Kaida blinked, then laughed, a sound that startled even her. You speak boldly, human. Maybe that's why you keep me around, Evan said, looking up with a small smile. Everyone else here agrees with you. That's not advice. That's an echo. Her laughter faded, replaced by something thoughtful. You assume I want to be disagreed with. I assume you're smart enough to know that comfort kills ideas. For a moment, the Empress, ruler of 5 systems, was simply silent. The human had a way of disarming her, not through charm or flattery, but with logic, honest, direct, and impossible to intimidate. Kaida walked closer. Your species. You rely on instinct and improvisation rather than structure. It's inefficient. Maybe, Evan said, but structure never invented fire. Before Kaida could respond, the doors slid open. High Chancellor Vrax entered, face pale, hands trembling slightly. Your Majesty. Urgent news. You must come. Kaida's calm vanished instantly. Explain. There's been an incident, Vrax said, glancing at Evan nervously. In the royal archives. They hurried through the glowing corridors to the secure vaults beneath the spire. The scent of burnt circuitry filled the air. Security drones buzzed around the sealed doors, their lenses flashing red. Commander Routh stood waiting. His black armor gleamed under the emergency lights, and his eyes burned with a quiet satisfaction. Your Majesty, he said, bowing just enough to avoid insult. We've identified an intruder. Kaida's voice turned sharp. An intruder? In my archives. Yes, Routh said, tapping a control pad. The hollow screen flickered to life, showing blurry footage. A human figure entering the restricted chamber hours earlier. The timestamp glowed in red. The figure wore a worker's uniform. The camera angle was grainy, distorted. But the face, it was Evan Cole. Kaida stared at the image, expression unreadable. Evan froze beside her, eyes wide. That's not me. Routh smiled slightly. Our sensors disagree. He accessed a terminal linked to the Ascension Gauntlet's design files. Perhaps to understand how to cheat? That's a lie, Evan said firmly. I wasn't near the archives. Vrax stepped forward nervously. The security logs confirm his ID. His access code was used. Kaida turned to Evan. Explain. I can't, he said. Unless your security system learned how to forge fingerprints. Routh's smirk deepened. Clever, but lies won't save you. You were given a position of trust and used it to steal classified information. Typical human greed. Evan's jaw tightened. You don't like that I survived your test. Now you're trying to erase it. Routh stepped closer, his armored boots echoing. I dislike parasites who rise above their station. The tension in the air felt like the seconds before a lightning strike. Kaida's eyes flicked between them, the smirking commander, the furious human. Enough, she said finally. Evan Cole, until this matter is resolved, you are confined to quarters. Commander Routh, investigate further. Quietly. As you command, Routh said, bowing again, but his grin lingered too long. 2 guards escorted Evan away. He didn't resist. He only looked back once, meeting Kaida's eyes. For the first time, she saw something in them that unsettled her. Not fear, not anger, disappointment. Hours passed. The palace grew silent again. Kaida sat alone in her chambers, the same hollow footage replaying before her, over and over. Something didn't fit. The gait, the posture, and the figure moved differently. Subtle but wrong. Too rigid, too deliberate, she enlarged a frame. The shadow behind the figure didn't match the lighting angle. Artificial overlay. Someone had altered it. Her hand tightened into a fist. Roth, she whispered. Meanwhile, deep within the servants' quarters, Evan sat on the edge of his bed staring at the floor. The door was sealed, guarded by 2 silent soldiers outside. His mop and tools lay scattered nearby. He rubbed his temples, frustration building. This is a setup, he muttered. Clean floors, dirty politics. A faint mechanical click came from the vent above him. He froze. Then a small maintenance drone, one he had repaired days ago, crawled through the grate and dropped into his lap. Hey there, little guy, Evan whispered. The drone projected a blue light, forming a tiny hologram of Kaida. It was a private relay transmission. Her voice, calm but low, filled the room. Evan listened carefully. I have reason to believe the footage was falsified. You are not safe. Commander Routh acts without my order. Stay where you are until I reach you. Evan exhaled slowly. Finally, someone believes me. The drone's light flickered, the feed cutting abruptly. Outside, the guards' helmets turned toward each other. One tapped his comlink. Commander, a voice whispered through the static. The human received your bait signal. He believes the Empress sent it. Proceed. Proceed, came Routh's cold reply. The guards unlocked the door. Evan looked up, confused. The Empress already. The first guard drew a stun baton. Evan didn't wait for the explanation. He moved and fast, instinctive. Years of dodging machinery taught him timing. He kicked the edge of the bed, sending it crashing into one guard's legs, then ducked as the baton swung. Sparks flew. He sprinted into the hall, alarms flaring red behind him. Somewhere above, Kaida's voice rang through the palace comms, furious and clear. Commander Routh, she said. Stand down. That is an order. But Routh didn't answer. He was already tracking the fleeing human through the palace sensors, eyes narrowed, lips curling into a quiet smile. Run, little janitor, he murmured. Let's see how far your cleverness takes you. And for the first time since the gauntlet began, Evan realized the test had never ended. It had only changed shape. Now it wasn't about relics or obstacles. It was survival. The alarms howled through Aurelion's spire like the cries of an ancient beast. Crimson lights flashed across the palace walls, casting the marble corridors in a flickering red glow. The sound of boots thundered through the hallways, soldiers shouting, drones buzzing overhead, systems locking doors one by one. Evan Cole ran. His bare footsteps echoed on the cold floor as he weaved through maintenance tunnels he knew better than anyone else. His lungs burned, but his mind stayed sharp. Every intersection, every door, every vent, he'd cleaned them all. He knew which ones jammed, which ones led nowhere, which ones he could use. The palace AI announced coldly, "Security breach. Human detainee attempting escape. Lethal force authorized." "Great," he muttered. "Now I'm a breach." He slid down a narrow shaft, landing hard in the substation beneath the energy wing. Sparks crackled from the walls. Through the grated floor, he could see the faint blue glow of the city below. He pressed his back to the wall, catching his breath. His hands trembled slightly, adrenaline and disbelief mixing in equal parts. Yesterday he'd been mopping hallways. Today he was running from an army. He whispered to himself, "If this is the promotion package, I want a refund." High above in the royal command hall, Empress Kaida's patience shattered. "Where is he?" she demanded, her voice sharp as a blade. Commander Routh bowed before her holographic throne, his armor black against the glowing floor. "Still within the palace perimeter, Majesty. He's proving difficult to contain." Kaida's silver eyes narrowed. You mean he's outsmarting your men? Roth straightened, the faintest trace of anger flashing behind his composure. Humans are unpredictable, but not unstoppable. I will retrieve him. Alive, Kaida said coldly. If you disobey me again, Commander, you won't need to worry about retrievals ever again. Routh bowed lower. As you command. But as he turned away, his smile returned. He had no intention of bringing the human back alive. In the lower decks, Evan worked quickly. He found an open control panel and ripped a handful of wires free. Sparks jumped across his fingers, but he didn't stop. I've fixed this system 3 times, he muttered, rewiring the interface. Guess I get to break it once. He rerouted power from the palace grid to the lower ventilation shafts. The lights dimmed, and then the alarms in this section went dead. When the next group of soldiers entered the hall, they found only empty shadows. Evan emerged from a maintenance hatch behind them, crouched low and whispered, "Boo!" He shoved one guard into another and sprinted past before they could react. Plasma shots scorched the walls behind him. He ducked into a dark corridor lined with massive statues, ancient Helian rulers carved in polished obsidian. Their hollow eyes reflected the flickering emergency light. His communicator, and still clipped to his belt, buzzed faintly. He pressed it. Kaida? Her voice crackled through static. Evan, where are you? In the history wing, he whispered. Hiding between dead people who probably hate me. Listen carefully, she said. Roth planted false evidence. He's working with the Cerix Compact. They want to destabilize my rule, and your trial gave them the perfect excuse. So I'm the bait, Evan said grimly. You're the key, Kaida corrected. They're using your presence to justify military action. If you're killed, they'll claim you were a spy. If you survive, they'll call it treason. Evan sighed. I miss when my biggest problem was running out of floor cleaner. A faint noise cut through their channel, the sound of metal boots. Kaida's voice hardened. Evan, listen to me. There's an exit route through the throne substructure. Go down through the central column. There's an emergency capsule docked inside. You can reach the outer ring safely. Why help me? He asked quietly, a pause. Then softly, because I've spent years surrounded by machines that obey, and you're the first creature who ever told me no. The comm went silent. Evan slipped through the lower hallways until he reached the heart of the spire, the core beneath the throne itself. The massive column rose through the palace, a fusion of crystal and circuitry that pulsed with energy. He climbed through the maintenance hatch, descending into a narrow shaft filled with humming conduits. The air shimmered with heat. Halfway down, he froze. Something was wrong. The emergency capsule Kaida mentioned wasn't there. Instead, a small device sat blinking in the shadows, a detonator wired into the support structure. His eyes widened. Oh no, Roth's voice echoed from above. Oh yes, human, Evan looked up. The commander stood on the upper platform, flanked by armored guards. You were useful, but now you're just an inconvenience. The Empress has been blinded by curiosity. You, however, will be her lesson in consequence. Evan raised his hands. Let me guess. You detonate this, blame me for sabotaging the palace, and become the hero who saved her. Routh smirked. You are smarter than I expected. Evan's eyes darted to the detonator. But not as dumb as you think. He grabbed a nearby control rod and jammed it into the fuse chamber. The device sparked, short-circuiting instantly. The lights around them flickered, then surged back on, flooding the entire shaft with harsh white light. Routh cursed and fired. Evan dove behind a conduit, the plasma bolt sizzling past his head. He rolled, grabbed a broken pipe and swung it into the guard who descended after him. The guard fell, armor clanging. Evan jumped for the support beam, climbing fast. Another shot grazed his arm, searing pain flashing through him. Routh descended, blade drawn, his voice low and venomous. You've caused enough chaos. Funny, Evan said through clenched teeth. I was just thinking the same about you. Routh swung, his plasma blade slicing through metal. Evan ducked, sparks flying across his face. He kicked the lower railing loose, sending debris crashing into the commander's feet. For a moment, balance faltered, and in that instant, Evan hit the emergency manual override. The entire throne column jolted, and the elevator platform beneath Routh suddenly dropped. The commander's eyes widened as the floor vanished beneath him. He fell, disappearing into the glowing abyss below, Evan leaned over, panting, gripping his burned arm. Guess we're both out of your chain of command now. The column shuddered again, alarms blaring. He'd damaged the stabilizers. The spire was destabilizing. He started climbing upward, every muscle screaming. In the royal chamber above, Kaida stood as tremors shook the floor. "Report!" she shouted. A technician shouted back, "Explosion in the throne substructure. Commander Routh is missing." Kaida didn't wait, she ran. Her guards followed, shouting after her, but she ignored them all. She descended through the maintenance stairs, wind from the collapsing systems whipping her silver hair around her face. She reached the base just as Evan crawled out of the smoke. Coughing, covered in dust and ash, their eyes met. Relief, disbelief, and something unspoken. She helped him to his feet. "You survived," she breathed. "Would have been rude not to," he said with a weak grin. Kaida's hand tightened on his shoulder. "Routh is dead?" "Fell into his own trap," Evan said. "I just gave gravity a little encouragement." The Empress looked up at the trembling ceiling. "Then his game ends tonight," she turned to him. "Come with me. The Council must see the truth. We end this conspiracy together." Evan nodded, though exhaustion pulled at every muscle. For the first time since he'd set foot in this alien palace, he wasn't just surviving. He was part of something bigger, a rebellion hidden beneath royal light. And the next move would change the fate of two species forever. The next sunrise over Aurelian was unlike any before. For centuries, its towers gleamed as symbols of order, the proud reflection of Helian power. But this morning, the light struck a city divided. The air was thick with whispers, fear, and something else, disbelief. Because a human, a simple custodian, was now at the center of an empire's storm. Inside the Grand Council Hall, thousands of delegates filled the amphitheater's spiraling seats. Rows of shimmering banners hung from the ceiling, each representing a planet bound under Kaida's rule. The air thrummed with tension. At the center of it all stood the Empress, regal and unshaken in her silver armor. Beside her stood Evan Cole, bruised but standing tall, his uniform torn and burned. Across the platform, Prince Vorin of the Serix Compact, tall, violet-skinned, eyes like molten gold, glared at them both. His tone dripped venom. "Your Majesty," he began, voice echoing through the chamber, "we come not to question your wisdom but your judgment. You gave power to a creature who corrupted your systems, destroyed a section of your palace, and killed your own commander." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kaida's voice cut through it like lightning. "Routh was a traitor. His crimes have been proven." "By whom?" Vorin countered smoothly. "A human? A being from a world still burning oil for fuel? A janitor elevated to the throne room. Does that not insult your entire dominion?" Evan clenched his fist but stayed silent. Kaida's hand twitched beside him, a silent signal to hold. Vorin continued, pacing with slow theatrical steps. "You claim to rule through strength, Empress. Then prove it. Let the Dominion decide through ancient law, trial by combat." Gasps filled the chamber. Even Kaida blinked, momentarily taken aback. "You invoke the Helian right of resolve?" Vorin bowed mockingly. "Unless, of course, you fear the outcome." Kaida's jaw tightened. She could not refuse, just to do so would mark her as weak before the entire council. But before she could respond, Evan stepped forward. "I'll fight." The entire chamber fell silent. Vorin's grin widened. How noble. How foolish. A human defending an empire that doesn't even consider him one of its own. Kaida turned sharply to Evan. "No, I forbid it." "With respect," he said. "You can't. He challenged your decision, not your rule." "That makes me the one on trial," Vorin's laughter echoed. "Then it's decided. At dusk, the trial of worlds. The human versus the Prince of Serix. Let the gods of Helion witness what happens when prey pretends to be predator." The chamber emptied in chaos. Advisors pleaded, guards panicked, and Kaida stood frozen, torn between duty and something dangerously close to fear. Finally, she stormed into the private war chamber where Evan sat alone, checking the bruises along his arm. "Have you lost your mind?" she hissed. He looked up calmly. "Pretty sure I found it somewhere around your throne column. This isn't a joke," she said sharply. "The Serix don't duel, they execute. Their bloodlines are trained for centuries in ritual combat." "Then I guess I'll have to improvise," he said quietly. Kaida paced in front of him, her composure cracking for the first time. Do you think I want you to die? Evan met her eyes. No, but if I don't stand up, everything you're trying to protect dies anyway. That silenced her. He continued, voice steady but low. You said once that comfort kills ideas. You're the empress of the most advanced civilization in this sector. And they still treat you like a puppet of tradition. Someone has to break the pattern. Maybe it's the janitor. Kaida turned away, eyes glinting with something deeper than pride. You don't belong in our wars. Then let me show them what belonging really means. The arena of the trial was a colossal circle carved into the heart of the spire itself, a structure so ancient it predated even the Dominion. Its walls glowed faintly with inscriptions from a forgotten age, words that meant truth through blood. As dusk fell, the crowd gathered in silence. Thousands of voices hushed as the Empress took her seat on the elevated dais. Her face was unreadable. Evan entered from the northern gate wearing simple battle gear, light armor, flexible, unadorned. No advanced tech. No weapons beyond a steel baton and a mind that refused to quit. From the opposite side, Prince Vorin emerged in ceremonial combat plating that shimmered with bioenergy. The gauntlets on his arms pulsed with deep purple light. His presence alone bent the air with power. Begin, intoned the officiator. Vorin didn't hesitate. His first strike was a wave of kinetic force that ripped through the air like a sonic bomb. Evan rolled aside, the blast throwing dust and shards into the crowd. He came up coughing but alive. Nice warm-up, Vorin sneered. You think this is a game, animal? No, Evan said. Games are supposed to be fair. He rushed forward, feinting left, ducking low, and smashing his baton against the prince's knee joint. The armor barely dented, but Vorin staggered, not from pain but surprise. Evan followed up with a sweep, then rolled backward before the counterstrike hit. The ground exploded where he'd stood. Kaida leaned forward unconsciously. He wasn't faster, he wasn't stronger, but he wasn't guessing. Every move, every dodge was calculated like a mechanic solving a riddle. Vorin growled and activated his gauntlets. The air shimmered as gravity itself seemed to bend. Evan felt his body sink, knees straining, bones creaking. Your kind crawled from mud, Vorin hissed. And to mud you return. Evan gritted his teeth, his voice straining. Yeah, well, mud builds bricks. He slammed his baton into the ground, using it as leverage, and yanked a piece of fallen debris into the energy field of Vorin's gauntlet. The gravity pulse snapped toward it, disrupting its focus just long enough for Evan to move. He lunged forward, grabbed the prince's arm, and redirected the remaining charge straight into the arena floor. The energy rebounded, a burst of light and force that sent both men flying in opposite directions. When the smoke cleared, Vorin was on his knees, his armor sparking. Evan stood barely, every muscle screaming. The officiator began to speak, but Kaida raised a hand. Not yet. Vorin staggered to his feet, eyes burning with fury. You dare humiliate me? Evan wiped the blood from his mouth. You humiliated yourself the moment you called this justice. The prince roared and charged. Evan sidestepped, pivoted, and, with the last of his strength, used the prince's own momentum to throw him into the arena's central energy pillar. The field flared, then collapsed. Vorin hit the ground hard, armor cracking, body unmoving. Silence fell over the arena. The officiator turned toward the dais. Outcome, human victor. Kaida rose slowly, her voice carrying across the stunned crowd. Let it be known that humanity stands not as servant, not as novelty, but as equal. The trial has spoken. The Dominion will remember. The crowd erupted, some in cheers, others in disbelief. Evan looked up at her. Their eyes met, exhaustion, relief, respect, and something unspoken, ancient as every war ever fought for freedom. The Empress stepped down from her dais and extended her hand. He took it. Together they stood at the center of the arena, a human and an alien queen, beneath the fractured light of Aurelian's twin moons. Somewhere far beyond the city's glow, distant satellites turned their sensors toward the planet. Data streams pulsed toward unknown destinations. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived. The twin suns of Aurelian rose like molten fire, their light spilling over the glass towers and metallic veins of the capital. The city below shimmered, not with the confidence of conquest but the fragile quiet of change. For the first time in centuries, the Helion Dominion awoke not to orders but to questions. Inside the Grand Council chamber, the world watched. Every channel in the system broadcast the same image. Empress Kaida, standing tall in her silver regalia, and beside her, a human in worn armor, still bearing the bruises of victory. The council chamber buzzed with restrained chaos. Voices clashed in a dozen languages: anger, pride, disbelief, awe. Evan could feel it in the air, the weight of 1,000 eyes from 1,000 worlds. Kaida lifted her hand. Silence fell like gravity. Yesterday, she began, her voice carrying across the vast hall, we witnessed something no historian, no scientist, no priest of Helion predicted. Her gaze drifted briefly to Evan. A human stood against a prince of Serix and prevailed. Not through strength, not through power, but through will. A murmur rippled across the chamber. Kaida continued. For too long we believed perfection was found in design, in our machines, our laws, our traditions. We forgot what made us ascend in the first place. She stepped forward, her tone soft but unyielding. Imperfection, curiosity, defiance, the courage to question what should never be questioned. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Kaida's hand extended toward Evan. This man, Evan Cole of Earth, embodies those forgotten virtues. He faced our greatest warriors, our deadliest traps, and the weight of our arrogance, and he taught us that strength is not in bloodline or technology, but in choice. Evan blinked, unsure how to react to a room full of alien nobility staring at him like a paradox. He leaned slightly toward her. You're making me sound like a superhero. I mostly just didn't want to die. A faint ripple of laughter passed through the hall. Even Kaida smiled. Then perhaps survival, she said, is the truest heroism of all. Later, the two of them stood on the royal balcony, overlooking the endless cityscape. Below, crowds filled the plazas, chanting in languages Evan didn't understand. Some carried banners of the Dominion. Others, to Kaida's surprise, carried the crude flag of Earth hastily drawn from archives. You realize, Evan said quietly, you just broke every rule your ancestors built. Kaida's eyes remained on the horizon. An empire that never breaks its own rules eventually breaks its people instead. He smirked. You're starting to sound human. She looked at him then, the faintest trace of amusement in her voice. And you somehow sound like a leader. He shook his head. No thanks. I've seen what sitting on that throne does to people. I'm happy fixing things, machines, ideas. Maybe even a few broken empires. Kaida turned to face him fully, her silver hair catching the light. Then fix this one with me. Evan hesitated. That's a big job. I'm an empress, she said. I don't offer small ones. They shared a long silence, and the kind that needed no words. Around them, the city hummed with new energy. Above, starships formed shifting patterns across the twin suns. Later that night, the palace corridors were still, bathed in the blue glow of moonlight. Kaida sat alone in her chamber, a glass of translucent liquid in her hand. Her reflection stared back from the window, the ruler of a civilization reborn and uncertain. Behind her, the door slid open softly. You should rest, Evan said. I don't sleep much, she replied. Rulers rarely do. He walked to the window beside her. You know, on Earth we have a saying, every sunrise belongs to those who survive the night. Kaida glanced at him, curious. And what do they do once they survive? They build something better, he said quietly. Or at least they try. Kaida looked back at the twin suns rising beyond the glass. For the first time, they didn't look like symbols of empire. They looked like hope. The following day, the official declaration spread through every world under Helion control. The Helion-Earth Alliance is formed, a union of technology and spirit, of precision and unpredictability, of design and defiance. The broadcasts showed images of humans walking beside Helions, engineers exchanging tools, diplomats shaking hands across species lines. And in one quiet frame, almost lost among the noise, stood Evan and Kaida on the observation deck of a new orbital station. He wore his worn gloves, still stained from the gauntlet's dust. She wore her crown, though now she'd forged a new one. Simpler, lighter, meant to represent balance, not dominance. Evan looked out at the stars and said softly, You think they'll remember this day? Kaida smiled faintly. They'll remember the day a janitor changed the course of an empire. He chuckled. Guess that's one way to clean up the galaxy. Kaida's laughter echoed, soft, bright, real. Outside the viewport, the stars began to align as the first Helian Earth fleet powered up, not for war but for exploration. And as the twin suns rose over Aurelian once more, their light caught both faces, blue and human, side by side. Not ruler and subject, not alien and man, but equals. A new chapter had begun, the age of humanity and Helion together.